Microphone. There we go. Now they can hear me. Nice. Great. All right. Brilliant. Sorry about that. And then you know what? I'm also gonna um, change the video capture device to there we go. Color space. Sure. Done. Um, mm, yeah. I definitely uh, sorry. Hold on. Transform. Fit to screen. Great. Okay. Well, um, that's fine. All right. Never mind, guys. Sorry. We're continuing. Okay. At least the recording can definitely hear me now. That was concerning. So today's goals. We're going to talk about what 3D models are, what Blender is, why we're using it, navigating Blender, selecting objects, transforming things, adjusting your view. Just the most basic things that are important. But before we go on, it's important to say that 3D models are, they're geometry. They're the geometry that makes up a 3D video game, but also a 2D video game. 2D games do rely on 3D models. Those 3D models are typically really simple, like planes or like, the walls and the floor of a room. But generally, even a lot of 2D games these days are just 3D worlds that are being displayed in such a way that they appear 2D. And generally involve like 2D surfaces moving around with sprites on them, little animated characters. But yeah, it's important to say that also 3D models are made up of these vocabulary words here. We got vertices, which are like points, edges, and faces. And there's also more than meets the eye to a 3D model. There's a bit of metadata. And we'll talk about that. These are vertices, the points, right? Faces, edges, just basic vocabulary. Metadata. What's metadata? What do I mean by that? You know how an image file, like a PNG, tends to have a lot more data than just the image itself. It has stuff about its size, its dimensions, which I guess can be calculated at runtime, but it also sometimes stores data like when it was taken, and it has like a name and stuff. Models have metadata too. They have vertex colors, which is just like a three numbers for every point. These can be used to store all sorts of very relevant information for different special effects in video games, but you rarely use them. The UV map is a big part of 3D model data. When you export a 3D model, it's not just a geometry, you're also describing how that geometry relates to a 2D square. And so we can see this cube over here has been projected to this 2D image, and you can see how like E5, or rather there's C5 is this, so D5 is that, D6 is that. I hope that sort of makes sense. And we'll obviously go into more detail. I'm just giving you a bit of a taste of what's to come. Normals describe the direction that every point on the surface is facing. We'll talk about that in a second, but you can kind of fake that data, and that's what normal maps are all about. We'll talk about that too. And material IDs, which are like which texture goes where, sort of. They're like a number for every face. So like some faces might be on material 0, some faces are on material 1. You'll see. Here's an example of UV mapping. Here's our cube, and here's the UV unwrapping of that cube. It's called UV unwrapping because XYZ is used to describe three-dimensional spaces. U and V is like the 2D axes, like the U axis and the V axis. Why not X and Y? I think the roots for that are in calculus. There's something called the Jacobian that's really relevant here. But we won't go into depth on the math behind what UV unwrapping does. I hope this is just somewhat intuitive. Like you can see how this cube has been projected to this cross over here. These are normals. These are two identical 3D models. And this one has its normals depicted as these little hairs, these purple lines coming out. A normal, anyone that took calculus in here probably knows, yes, surface integration and flux integrals. Anyone that took normals knows that, anyone that took calculus knows that a normal is like a line that's perpendicular to a surface. The more correct definition is a line that's orthogonal to a surface, which just means that it's like coming straight out of that surface. But you can manipulate normals when you're 3D modeling to create different effects. So these are flat normals. You can see that the normals at every vertex are split. There's like the normals for this face are still pointing like straight up at this vertex. For this face, it's this purple line. For this face, it's like a different purple line. They're not the same. They don't transition smoothly from face to face. It creates this effect. It's very obvious that this sphere is in fact made up of a bunch of 2D faces. It's very obvious. However, this is that same exact sphere with a button press that turns on smooth normals. So that's what smooth normals do. You can see that these purple lines on the corners here, it's now just one purple line, which resembles that like interpolation has occurred. Like there's a smooth transition from the normals of this face to the normals of that face. It's just, it follows a curve. That's a matter of pressing like a single button. This is the same sphere that we saw a second ago, but with smooth normals turned on. It's a feature that you can turn on per face, and you can do significantly more normal manipulation outside of Blender. It's just like involved in 3D modeling. Like you can turn that on to create more smooth looking surfaces. Don't worry about this Unit 1, Unit 2 shenanigans. Just know that whatever you're making in Blender is going to look way uglier than what it finally looks like in Unreal Engine. So don't be discouraged when whatever you're making looks really ugly. What you should try to do is make it look as pretty as possible in Blender. And if you are happy with how it looks in Blender, it's going to look absolutely gorgeous in Unreal Engine or any other engine. It's going to have lighting and shading. That statement has become less true lately because Blender now supports a lot of really, really pretty lighting effects as you're modeling, which it didn't used to do. Blender used to look a lot more like this, but now Blender can look like this. It's just, don't worry about it. Just for the most part, do what you can to make things pretty in Blender, but don't be discouraged when you're making 3D models, because they will look somewhat ugly. So what is Blender? What can it do? Why are we using it? Blender can do almost everything. I'm talking modeling, animation, rendering, which is like Pixar stuff, video editing, you can do that in Blender. Motion capture, you can do that in Blender. 2D animation, you can really do 2D animation in Blender, like really well these days. After Effects and post-processing, you can do it in Blender. We're just going to use it for 3D modeling, but these other skills are involved in game development, and we might touch on animation later on. Maybe not 2D animation just because I'm not so skilled in that, but it's something that I definitely want to learn, so I might learn it just to teach it to this club. That'd be really fun. Yeah, so now you know the core info behind 3D models and the data we'll be playing with. Yeah, quick questions, I guess. I don't know. I think we're... Yeah, I'll just move on. This is the Blender interface. That's actually somewhat incorrect. Instead of... I'm going to skip through this and instead kind of show it myself, because this isn't really that useful. So let me crack open Blender. Yeah, these PowerPoints, I made this in like 10th grade, so it's not brilliant, but here's Blender. This is me launching Blender for the first time. How am I doing that? How am I spinning around? I am pushing down the middle mouse button. Blender, really, it's nice to have a mouse when you use Blender, like a proper mouse where you can push down the middle mouse button. If you're using a trackpad, you're gonna have a bad time. So if anyone has a mouse and wants to like pause for a second and go get it, I will gladly pause. We've got a lot of time on our hands. It's only been like 15 minutes. Additionally, so holding down middle mouse button lets you do this. Holding down shift and middle mouse button lets you pan. This is panning. This is like rotating. Notice that the center of rotation moves when you pan. So now our center of rotation is kind of obviously like over here. To move it back to the center, you kind of have to pan back. Or there's a keybind, Shift C. It moves the center of rotation to the center of all the objects in our scene, which are these three objects. So what just happened is when I pressed Shift C, it went like, okay, what's the center point of these three guys? And it positioned us around this little like center in the middle of the screen here. That's kind of what happens. So if I delete this, this is a point light. By default, it spawns in Blender. I'm going to press X. X is the delete button. The delete key also works, but I prefer X because it gives you a warning. The delete button just deletes stuff instantly. And now if I press Shift C, you can see it sent us straight to the cube. We're at the very center of the universe of Blender. So this is the Blender user interface. Let's talk a little bit about what different things do and what we'll be interacting with the most. Blender's user interface is very modular. That's a very important thing to understand. So, what does that mean? If you hover over an edge until you get the mouse cursor that looks like, you know, a line with two arrows, you can right click and you can do vertical split or horizontal split. Let's do horizontal split. Now I'm dragging this line around. If I click, I've divided the user interface. And every chunk of the user interface on the top right corner has a little icon. And that icon represents what that section of the user interface is. So I can change this, for example, to be a 3D viewport. And I can change this to be the outliner, which is what that guy just was. There we go. That's the outliner now. See, I've effectively swapped the function of those two. I can make this the UV editor, and I can make this the graph editor for like animation. You can do all sorts of stuff. But you know, you kind of shouldn't, I guess. Like, just try to stick to the main thing. If you messed around and while I was saying that you know subdivided the crap out of your user interface, don't worry. Just press Control U. Actually, that's not it. Sorry. Press File, top left corner, File, and New, and then General. And just open a new file. It'll reset the user interface and reset the file. That used to be Control U. I guess it's not. It's Control N now. That's interesting. Control U was like factory reset or something back in the day. I don't know. Cool. Okay. So it's everyone's kind of hopefully there and following along. Yeah. Shift C centers your screen. Yeah. You're good. Yeah. Shift D is the duplication button. So here's something that is worth mentioning. Blender is what makes Blender special and what made Blender special back in the day compared to Maya, for example, is a great deal of reliance on keybinds. Now, with recent versions of Blender, there's a lot more buttons on the screen that are actually really intuitive. There's actually like a lot of kind of buttons and things that let you do stuff that you couldn't before. But Blender's keybinds are something that take a bit to learn. But anyone here that really wants to like be good and quick with Blender, you ought to learn the keybinds. They will dramatically increase your ability to model things quickly. I don't want you to be like over here and being like, oh, okay, I'm gonna extrude this, and it's like, oh no, I did the whole thing. So let me go back to box select and then click and drag, and oh no, I got these points. Like, no, I'd rather you be able to go, oh yeah, let me just mouse over this, press L, then I'm gonna press X, I'm gonna click, then I'm gonna press E, I'm gonna press S and E and S and E. Like, it's much faster if you're not using all of these buttons on the side here. Much faster. And trust me, there's not that many keybinds. There's only like a handful, and they're sort of modular. So, anyways, back to where we were. So, the user interface. Yeah, the things that you should know is just like this timeline down here is utterly irrelevant. We're not really doing any animations. You can actually get rid of it by right-clicking on the edge between it and the 3D viewport and then doing join areas, which will merge the viewport down into it. And now you get a little bit of extra 3D space. This panel over here is the details panel, and it is context sensitive. What does that mean? If I had a light here and I was clicking on the light, I get different options. You see how these change? I get completely different options. Like the light gives me light related stuff. I don't have that here. I have like a geometry tab. So some of these tabs you interact with frequently. The white ones are context insensitive. Like these top few do not change no matter what you have selected. They pertain to like rendering, which we're not going to do, and stuff like scene units. So don't worry about that. What we will use is maybe some of these, but let me go back to the PowerPoint and regain some structure to what it is we're learning today. So yeah, let's talk a little bit about what happens if you don't have a mouse. Let's say you don't have a mouse. Oh, you're good, DevTech. DevTech accidentally DM'd me or something. We're good. Oh, yeah, someone used the grease pencil and made a happy face. That's nice, Santolini. So yeah, this is uh, if you don't have a mouse, which it's very possible, you can actually click and drag up here. I'm literally just clicking and dragging. And this actually is more useful for other reasons. A lot of you probably don't have a number pad, and number pads are a lot more rare than mice when it comes to laptops. So number pads in Blender let you orient your perspective. They let you quickly orient your perspective in a flat way, like relative to a given axis, and like rotate it by consistent intervals. If you don't have a number pad, you can literally just click up here. I can click on Z, and it'll show me from above. Click on Y, shows me from the side. X from the front. Negative Z. See, it flips around the cube so that I can, or not the cube. It flips around our perspective to see the cube from different angles. That's actually really useful, but not yet, not for us. Right, the outliner is sort of like a list of all the objects in the world. Collections are like folders. Blender calls these like folders collections. So yeah, the most important window is this details panel. The rest is miscellaneous. Yeah, we'll definitely be interacting specifically with this little button up top. I know it's difficult to see, and I think I can actually zoom. I know for a fact that you can like zoom in parts of the interface, which is like really, really funny and weird. Or maybe they fixed that. Yeah, there was like this really weird way where you could you could like zoom in the interface. Let me just do this. I'm going to make my interface significantly, there we go, a little bit bigger, a little bit more tight, but this button up here, pretty significant. We'll talk about what it does. Additionally, these buttons change your view mode. This last one is like the most intensive one. It's like final render. It's what everything looks like. If you had like a light source, it would actually do shadows. You can see I have a plane here, and it's got like shadows that are being accurately calculated, and it's like this last mode is like Unreal Engine mode. This mode is like Blender's 3D modeling mode. Rule of thumb: if whatever you're making looks pretty in solid view mode, then you're good. So this is solid. This is material, which is this weird in between. This is rendered. This is wireframe. You know, lets you see a wireframe. Anyways, not super critical. We'll get to that later and why that's significant. This is the most important part of today, and this is what everyone should like learn to start feeling comfortable with Blender. There are 3 really key keybinds to Blender. They are grab, rotate, and scale. These represent the transformations that you can do to any piece of geometry. You can grab it, which is like moving it around. You can rotate it, which is rotating it around, like, you know, scale it, make it bigger or smaller. And the keybinds for those are G, R, and S. Grab, rotate, scale. Grab something, move it around. R, rotate it. S, scale it. It gets better. These keybinds combine with other keybinds. If you press X, Y, or Z after grabbing, rotating, or scaling, you constrain the operation to that axis. So I press G. And by the way, even more important than what I'm saying right now is your ability to teach yourself. And that means like when I don't want you necessarily looking back at this lecture being like, oh God, what do I do? Or like not knowing what to look up on the internet. One of the beauties of both Blender and Unreal Engine is that they're loaded with tips to help you as you're working. Notice on the bottom of my screen here, notice this bar along where I'm moving the cube. Notice this bar down here. It tells you what you can do when you're in the middle of an operation. So if I press G, I get all this stuff here. If I press X, X axis, Y, Y axis, Z, Z axis. Shift X, I can constrain it to the X plane. Shift Y, constrain it to the Y plane. Shift Z, constrain it to the Z plane. C, clear constraints. Tab, snap, Shift tab, snap toggle. Now it's snapping to the grid. I didn't even know that. Literally just learned that. Automatic constraint, by using the middle mouse button, and it'll kind of constrain it in the direction that I drag it in. So you see, like those keybinds on the bottom are really helpful if you're ever like, oh God, how did I do that or something like that. That's helpful. But yeah, just as a rule of thumb, X, Y, Z constrains a transformation to that axis. So I can grab this cube, move it on the x-axis, the y-axis, the z-axis. I can rotate it. I can scale it on the z-axis. So really, like that's critical. That's used everywhere. Like when I'm modeling here and I'm trying to make this thing, you can see it's actually constraining it to that axis. I want to move this and I want to move it in, but if I move it in, if I do that, it's like, oh no, I fucked it up. Like that's not good. What you want to do is you want to GY, and now I've got the front of the jet engine. If I do E, it actually automatically constrains it to the normal of the surface. If I do S there, it doesn't really matter. But if I want to actually move this, I don't want to move it randomly. You never want to do like a random thing because you're going to end up with a result like that. I want to move this along the y-axis and then scale it down, and then maybe extrude it along the y-axis and scale it down, and then extrude it along the y-axis again and scale it down. Like those constraints come up a lot. When I want to if I want to give this wings and I press extrude right now, if I press E, and then I want to scale these wings up, I don't want this. That looks ugly. What am I doing? These aren't wings. You know what are wings? Scale them on the x-axis, and now they're like that. And then I can scale them on the z-axis, and then I can scale them on the y-axis, and then I can grab them on the y-axis. If I had done that randomly, we would have had a garbage result. Constraining operations to an axis is what gives you control. So please learn GRS, XYZ. Grab, rotate, scale, constrain to X, Y, Z axis. These are like critical things. Yeah, anyways, let me go back to the cube. A little bit of Control Z. Yeah, so we'll talk about that. This is that's edit mode. So I've been hitting tab. Tab quickly shifts you to edit mode, but it's this button up here. You select an object that you want to edit, and then you go down to edit mode, and now you have options to select the vertices, edges, or faces. And you can select individual faces. You can use shift select to select multiple faces at once. I can scale these shift X and do that. Edit mode. Well, edit mode is like the crux of 3D modeling, but I was going to get to that. I really wanted to drill this in, that GRS XYZ. And the other thing is if you want to select everything or deselect everything, there will be a lot of times in Blender where you've got some really complex model. Like for example, I don't know. Let's see. Let's do this. There was a lot of times when I was modeling this scene where I was like, oh boy, oh boy, hold on, what's going on? Oh, there we go. All right. There's a lot of times when I was modeling this scene where I was accidentally trying to select these faces, but when I started when I would go over, I don't know, over here and start doing something here, and I would hold down shift and accidentally keep things selected, and then I would try to move these buttons, and I'd be like, okay, I'm happy with the finished result, but I accidentally dragged these guys over. So what you want to kind of do sometimes is Alt A deselects everything. A selects everything. So double tapping A also deselects everything. So it's just A or double tapping A. Yeah, it's that's how you select and deselect stuff. Yeah. Okay. Where were we? We'll get to edit mode in a bit. Right, selecting things in Blender is a really big thing as well. It's kind of what differentiates. I know we're focusing on selection and stuff and not actually modeling quite yet, but this is important. You're gonna find yourself working with a model that has a lot of parts, and you're gonna want to efficiently be able to select the faces that you want to manipulate. And you're going to be sitting there and you're going to be like, oh, let me just shift click and then shift click and then shift click and then shift click. Takes a second. There's faster selection methods. There's box select. How did I do that? I pressed B. You can also just click and drag if you have this selected, which you do by default. You can press C, and that's circle select. You can also circle deselect by holding down the middle mouse button and dragging instead of left clicking and dragging. So how did I duplicate these cubes? With shift D. Sorry about that. Jumped the gun on that. You can also probably right click and duplicate. Yeah, that works. That's pretty cool. Yeah. Yeah. All right. So that's circle select. There's also box select, which lets you, just drag over a group of objects. We covered transforming and constraining. This is another one, just last little piece of insight before we actually get into more, 3D modeling, is that whenever you're doing an operation in Blender, like grabbing, rotating, or scaling, you can actually manipulate, not manipulate, you can type in numbers. You can type in numbers. So say I want to rotate this cube 45 degrees on the y-axis. I press RY, and then see on the top left corner there where it says rotation -135 around the y-axis. If I actually go to my keyboard and I just start typing right now, 4, 5, and I hit enter, you see how it typed it in there, and then I hit enter and it did it. It's exactly 45-degree rotation. I want to rotate this 45 degrees on the x-axis, R, X, 4, see how it typed 4 up here, 5, enter. I want to scale this cube to 2 times its size. I press S, I type in 2, enter. I want to scale this cube to 1/3 of its size. S, divide, I'm gonna press 3, and see if I hit slash, it toggles on if I'm dividing. So this is 3, slash is divide by 3. So just like that, I've divided by 3. Blender also has a lot of cool little math support in all of its text boxes. Like over here on location, I can type in 1 times 2 to the power of 4, and it solves the math. Wait, no, it totally didn't do that, did it? 2 to the... what the heck? 2 to the 4th is not 6. Huh. That was weird. 2 to the 4th. 2 to the 5th. What is it? It's doing plus? It's doing plus. For whatever reason, it's treating caret as a plus. Oh, whatever. That's strange. It does math. It does math in the text boxes. Something you should know. Let's see, muted mics. Caught lacking. I think this happens in some programming languages as well. That's funny. Oh, Hannah's Hannah's smile. That's cool. All right. So, all right. Let's cover some more 3D modeling type things. Grabbing and constraining. Don't worry about that. It might be XOR or something. Try 5. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, that might be it. Real quick, guys. One last thing of the preliminary stuff, right? So we covered X, Y, Z, and R, G, and S, G, R, and S, like grab, rotate, scale. One of the other important things is viewport shading. To make Blender look a little bit more pleasant to work with, there's some settings that you can turn on that will not melt your computer, but will make it a little easier to see what you're 3D modeling. For example, say I'm in a situation like this and I've got this plane, and then I'm going to duplicate it, and I've got another plane above it. It's kind of difficult to judge the depth there. I have to move my camera around to see what's going on. However, if you go to this drop down arrow, shading, while I'm in solid view mode, and I go down here to shadow, you can turn on a shadow, and now you got that shadow. Pretty nice, right? It gets better. You can also turn on cavity, and over here it says type screen. You can actually change this to both, and now you get these kind of lines of shading on concave points and lines of white on convex points, and you get a little bit of a depth shadow. You get a drop shadow over here. You kind of, I hope that's kind of visible. You get that shadow that wasn't there before. Previously, it looked like this, right? Significantly worse. I think this is a moderate improvement. Lets you see what you're modeling a lot better. So just something to know when to turn on. Just you go to here and you turn on shadow and cavity. It's located in this little drop down arrow next to all the rendering modes. That's somewhat intuitive, right? Because it's related to visualization, rendering mode. So you just go down here and you're like, okay, cavity, and and shadow, and it helps you see what you're modeling a little bit better. Back to the cube. So, everything looks better with shading, right? It certainly does. Yeah, what data makes up a 3D model? We got geometry, normals, the UV map, vertex colors, material IDs. We'll talk about those. Do smooth normals add more detail? No. So yeah, that was something to sort of emphasize. When we talked about smooth normals at the beginning, this is, here's a sphere with sharp normals. If I just click shade smooth, there it goes with smooth normals. You can still kind of make out the pattern, but you're not really supposed to. That's actually because of cavity shading. There it goes. It's completely smooth now. This sphere still has just as much data as it did before. It's not more complex. I did not have to subdivide it and make it like really geometrically dense to get that result. Less geometry is generally better, but in today's world, with computer graphics getting so advanced and technology getting advanced, it doesn't matter as much as it used to. But back in the day, you had to be very careful with just how much geometry you were using. So we've got that. Rotating, scaling, and grabbing, RSG. Circle selecting, press C to circle select, B to box select, A to select all. Pretty intuitive keybinds. Shift C, you accidentally, you're in Blender, you're just chilling there, and you accidentally move your view like a million miles away from whatever you were doing, and you're like, oh god, where did I go? I can't find where I am. Shift C sends you right back to the center of the action by finding the center of all of the objects in the world. So Shift C, that's the way to do that. I did not talk about orthographic and perspective view, but that's not too important. Yeah, all right. Let's get into the thick of it now. So actually, like, modeling stuff. Let's do this. 1.3 beginner 3D modeling. Is anyone kind of lost? Like, was that decent? Am I going a little too fast? Maybe. Any thoughts? We're doing all right, guys. You're on a different rendering mode. So you're on the rendered mode. Go to the solid mode. So the little four circles, click the one that's just a solid white circle. That's the one that you generally want to model in. The other ones are for like final results. And then click the drop down arrow and you'll see the entire menu. Shadow is a checkbox next to a slider near the bottom, and then cavity as well. Cavity is really just ambient occlusion, and shadow, turns on an actual like shadow in the world. You can change the angle with a little gear there. Yeah. Anyone else? Please ask questions, guys. Like it's okay. Hell, like unmute yourselves and we can talk about this. I don't know. Okay, I see what you're saying. So what you're probably doing, so chances are you're like G, and then you've got, it's like free when you press G initially, right? All I've done is I've pressed G. I haven't clicked on anything. If I hold it out here and then I press Y, you can see it snapped it to where it originally was. So that shouldn't be an issue. If I press X, it snapped it over. If I press Z, it snapped it over. The only time that you are confirming a motion is when you left click again. So if you left clicked and then you press G, Y, and then left click, yeah, you're going to be like way off of the Y axis. Just try not to click unless, yeah, like keep your fingers off the trigger, if that makes sense. Did that work? Yeah, yeah, cool. Okay, yeah, absolutely. Um, I realized that my desktop audio is not being captured. So like this whole time, not that anyone's really talked too much, but I do want these questions to be audible. I mean, the answers to them are audible, but give me a second. I'm gonna tinker with my settings for just a second here, and hopefully capture my desktop audio. I don't know why it's not being captured. Um, oh, wait, someone talk, please. Hey, all right. Hey, it's audible.
Yeah.
Very nice, very nice. Okay, perfect, perfect. Great. Sorry about that. um, awesome. All right, my Blender audio is now being, or Discord audio is being captured. Um, yeah, left click to confirm, right click to cancel. So like G, I right click, resets. Right click, resets. Or press escape, it resets. Press enter, confirms. Press left click, it confirms. So that applies to any operation. Slight exception for extrusion, and we'll talk about that. So here we go. Beginner 3D modeling. Let's get to it. So today, we're gonna learn about edit mode, deleting, undoing, and then three of the like most basic like things that just let you model almost anything: extrusion, loop cuts, and subdivision. So we talked a little bit about the metadata, yeah, whatever. Normally these lessons were like a week apart. Preliminary info. What we're making is referred to as a static mesh. It is a mesh. It is a collection of points, vertices, edges, and faces. Blender supports a lot of objects that aren't meshes. The camera is not a mesh. The lamps are not a mesh. They're like a completely different sort of data type in Blender. There's things like curves, which can become meshes, or meta balls, which are these like fluid looking balls you can see me playing around with here. They kind of do that cool thing. But they're not meshes until you tell them to behave like meshes. Until that, they're behaving as like infinite points that are being calculated like at runtime. Don't worry about it. Some other clarification that seems to confuse some people: a mesh object can have many disconnected parts. Like this is one object over here on the left with a lot of disconnected parts. This right here is three objects, and each one has like a mesh parts. This is like a light, a hanging like spotlight of the type that's used in like light shows and stuff. Yeah. Oh, that's funny. That's great. Yeah, some of these GIFs were too big, and Google Slides just doesn't handle them very well. So I don't know what was on that slide. Doesn't matter. Edit mode. Let's do edit mode. So go to Blender. Select your cube. You can delete the camera. So like just click this camera-looking thing. Press X. Now click the lamp. Press X. Click your cube. Go into edit mode. The keybind for this is tab. You can really quickly cycle between object and edit mode by pressing tab. So you're in edit mode when your cube is glowing like orange or something, and you have all these extra buttons on the side. These three buttons up here are key, the three ones that are to the right of the edit mode button. This is changes you to vertex select, so you can select points. This changes you to edge select, so you can select edges. And this is face select, so you can select faces. You tend to rarely use edge select. Another interesting thing about Blender is just how universal some things are. Holding down Shift to select multiple things actually applies to the user interface. You can hold down Shift and you can turn on multiple selection modes at the same time. So now I can select like individual edges or points, or click on a face to select the face, but that gets confusing. Just try to stay in like one mode. So like face mode will let you just select faces. If you're in face and vertex select, you might click here and be like, okay, I grabbed the face, but really it grabbed the four vertices. There's some weird situations. Oh yeah, what William just said is actually really convenient. F3 gives you a search menu for like any button in Blender. So, say you want to do something and you know what you want to do, but you don't know where to look for it. You can be like, subdivide, or subdivide edge ring or something, and maybe it'll do something with whatever you had selected. So yeah, the F3 button is like the search all of Blender for details button. Okay, So, oh boy. All right. Here we go. So switch to edit mode, and what is edit mode? Edit mode lets you manipulate geometry more than just simply transforming the entire object. There's a couple manipulations that are really good. Extrusion, loop cut, subdivision, deletion. These are like pretty fundamental manipulations. Those are the selection modes. You select individual like vertices and stuff. Edge select mode lets you select edges, all that. The same selection styles and methods still work. So circle select and box select still works in edit mode. You can use box select and circle select to click and drag on faces and like grab chunks of them. Holding down shift lets you select multiple things that you click on. So the first operation we're going to do is extrusion. Extrusion lets you do what you see I'm doing to the monkey's face over here. If you want a monkey to play around with, in edit mode, you can delete your cube's geometry, and you're actually still in edit mode for an object. The object is still called cube, there's just no geometry there. You can do Shift A, or you can click Add up here. It's the same menu, this Add menu, Shift A, and you can add a monkey. And this model is called Suzanne. There's a couple of standard models in computer graphics that are just kind of memes among computer graphics enthusiasts from like the 90s. Suzanne's not really one of them. There's like a bunny rabbit. There's a teapot that was generated by some like MIT lads. There's some like really funny early 3D models that became like kind of memes in the graphics world. So I'm in edit mode here for the monkey, and can select a face and press E, and it'll extrude that face. It'll extrude it along the normal of that face. To give you some more intuition about normals, let's take a look at man, it used to be in here. Here we go, normals. Here's the normals of every face here. It's a vector, right? It's just a line coming out of the face. So if I extrude this, it extrudes it along that vector.
Hey, Michael?
Yeah.
How do I select specifically a face instead of a vertex?
Go to face select mode. So on the top left, there's 3 buttons to the right of edit mode. Click the one that looks like a square, and then you should be able to click on surfaces, like faces.
Okay, cool, thank you.
Did that work?
Yes. Is there any way to quickly switch between them?
Yes, the 1, 2, and 3 button on your keyboard. 1, 2, 3, face, vertex, edge, face. That's a really quick way. Like,
okay, that's great.
I do Blender with one hand on the keyboard. That's a really kind of how it should be. See you, Trevor. Southwest. Oh, I'm gonna be at Southwest playing tennis the moment that this ends. So I'll see you there, maybe. Godspeed, Trevor. All right. So okay, yep. Monkey. Extruding. Here's another thing you can do with extrusion. I'm gonna select all of these faces. And I'm going to press Alt-E. Alt-E gives you the extrusion, but with a lot more details. So you can do extrude faces along normals. And what that does is it does something very different from extrusion. It's moving all these faces along their normals, but it's keeping them connected to each other. So you get this like single contiguous piece of mesh that yeah, kind of cool. Hell, I can actually here. Let me circle select that and all of that and all of that, and I can extrude this again, and then I can scale it on the x-axis. Yeah, look at that. That was effortless. Like, bam, you've 3D modeled a mohawk onto a monkey. Not very hard. So, how is that different from extruding? Notice when I extrude, it extrudes all the faces along their average normal. So it took like the average of this vector and that vector and that vector, like the lines coming out of those, and it extruded the entire glob along that. But if I do Alt-E and faces along normals, it extrudes each face along its individual normal, and that gives me a little bit more control to give my monkey a giant mohawk. Yeah, fun. I'm sorry? Alt-E. Yeah, Shift-E is That's edge sharpening, and it'll make your edges pink based on how far away you drag, and that's metadata that's just for Blender. It's very unrelated. Don't worry about that.
But there was a command you did that just started extrusion that wasn't going into that menu.
Yes, E is like the default, just, extrude whatever I have selected. And Alt E gives you that menu with extra options that lets you really quickly extrude like groups of faces and do some funky things, like for example, there, yeah, sick. Monke, yeah, extruding lets you do everything. Watch this. I'm gonna do this entirely with like extruding. Cube, right? I'm gonna do E S E S E S S E S E S E S shift click E S X S Y E S X S Y grab Y. Okay, here we go into E. Select these three and these three with shift clicking. E S X S Y grab Y, and we sort of have a flyer. I neglected to do some things that didn't involve extruding, but I just made this entire thing with extruding, scaling, and grabbing. Didn't even rotate a single time. Didn't click a single other button, just E, S, and G, and clicking, and I made this little jet engine 3D model looking thing. So yeah, extruding is everything. Extruding is like a big part of your 3D modeling escapades. If you extrude, you're set. You can do just about everything with extruding. There's other. Yeah. No, go ahead.
I think I just found out that while you're in the middle of extrusion, if you also hit the middle mouse button, you get the XYZ options to flip between.
Yeah, or just press XYZ. But yeah, middle mouse button lets you. Yeah. Actually, the thing is, extrusion is actually a two-part. It's like a two-part process, and that's kind of confusing to some people, and it leads to a lot of mistakes early on. At least it used to with my like 7th and 8th graders. Let me explain. Look at this cube. When I press E, it has done two things. It added new geometry. It added this like face and the 4 faces around it, and then it put me in grab mode and constrained me to the normal along which that face originally was. If I press Y, it's just like I'm in grab mode right now. Hell, if I press S, it'll change me to scale mode. So now I'm like scaling that new geometry. So extrusion has done two things. It has generated new geometry, and then it has put me in GRS mode, like grab, rotate, or scale. And I have control over that. I can type in 2 right now. I'm still in the extrusion operation. I haven't hit the GR or S key other than to change it. But here's something important. When I press E, and I'm like, oh, hold on, I didn't want to extrude, and I cancel, whether that's pressing escape or right click. It has canceled the grabbing, but it has not canceled the generation of geometry. In fact, that geometry is still there. I'm not going to press E, I'm going to press G. The geometry was there. So what that does is some people, a lot of people, honestly, you'll find people, they'll be like, okay, let me just extrude this. And then they'll right click and be like, oh no, I didn't mean to extrude. That geometry's still there. You haven't undone the operation. You have to press Control Z afterwards, and now the geometry's gone. And you literally like can't tell, which is the most annoying thing. So some people will be like, yeah, I have my finished 3D model, and it'll actually have a bunch of like hidden geometry all over the place. And then somebody else will come to it and be like, oh yeah, okay, let me just select the cube and move it around. And they'll do that, and it'll be like, oh, Jesus Christ, what the fuck is that? I thought I selected the cube. And it's like, no, there's actually like surfaces there that were there from the extrusions earlier that you never like deleted. So it's very important to be deliberate with your keystrokes in Blender. If you extrude and you're like, oh no, I didn't extrude, you gotta hit Control Z. You gotta hit Control Z if you cancel an extrusion. Now, don't worry too much. There's ways to correct this at the end of your modeling process. Like, at the end of your 3D model, you've got your finished, nice, like, complex, whatever the heck kind of model. Like, you've got your, I don't know, server rack here. What you can do is you can do different like debugging things. You can do like, hey, select all by trait loose geometry, and it'll select any like hanging geometry that's bad. You can do select all by trait, faces by sides, and anything that has more than 4 sides. But as you can see, this is a perfectly modeled. I don't make mistakes, no. But I mean, there's ways to debug that. For example, let me just go over here and like select a bunch of random stuff and extrude it, and then cancel immediately so that geometry is still there. You can't tell. You literally cannot tell, even in the render. It looks completely right. Oh yeah, that RTX render. It looks right. It looks just fine. You can't tell. But it's there, and it's going to be a problem when I try to 3D model this, and I'm like, oh no, I want to move the pipe. And I try to move it, and, well, it's actually not happening there, I suppose, but it would happen with... did I undo it or something? Maybe I don't know. Whatever. You can do, you can press M, and you can merge by distance, and I just removed 267 vertices that were less than 1, like nanometer apart. So in the world, if you have like points that are super close together because they're literally overlapping, you just press M and it merges them into each other. So yeah. My point is there's ways to debug against these mistakes, but they will get in the way of your process, so try not to make them. Make it a habit. If you undo extrusion, you're going to do Control Z. So it's 5:16. We got 45 minutes left. Let's get you guys making that little jet engine model thing that I just made. Yeah, extrusion stays when you cancel. That was very important. This is just extruding and translating. Do E, S, S there, you know, it's scale that down, do a little bit of E, S. How do I move the camera around with the trackpad? Right, you click and drag in this little circular thing on the top right corner of your screen. Thad, just put your mouse up here and drag around while holding down left click, and you should be good. That little XYZ thing with the dark gray circle around it, you should be able to just click it and drag. You can also click and drag the... Yes, yeah, you can't... Oh, so you mean panning. Okay, so panning, click the hand. See the hand? Click and drag while on the hand with your mouse. That'll work. You definitely want a mouse, though. Like, don't, you know, obviously this isn't optimal, so please get yourself a mouse. I have an extra mouse, and I'd be willing to give it to you. So, you know, if you're short a mouse, I have a Alienware mouse. It's very ancient, but it works well. So let me know. I got you. But yeah. Oh, gotcha. You're at the library. I see. All right.
I've got a single question.
Yeah.
I'm actually gonna share my screen.
Perfect.
Could you riddle me this? Can you see this lovely thing I've got going on here?
Actively riddling. Let's see. All right. Yeah, I see.
Right. So I'm just trying to wonder. So okay, following these instructions, I'm just trying to extrude these two faces. So I'll choose this one, right? And I'll choose this one. And
Yes.
I'll E, but then the whole thing goes.
Okay. So let's say you want to move them apart, right?
Right, yeah, like I want them to like just go outwards in the E direction.
So there's two things. There's two ways that we can sort of do this. But you want them to go outward in the X direction. So press SX once you've extruded. So
okay. So
grab them E.
S. Well, that's
No. Wait. Right click. Cancel. Okay. E S X. E S X. And now you're moving them apart on the X axis. Right? Which isn't exactly what you want because it's scaling relative to their original distance. Like the points that were farther apart move faster. Scale, just trust me here. Scale them out a little bit. No, that's fine. Scale them out a little bit. And then, okay. And now on the top of your screen, there's two little circles that are like, it's like a Venn diagram at an angle. It's a tiny little button, middle of the screen, not left. Yeah, that one. Click that. Click individual origins. And now do SX again. And press 0. Type in 0. Alright, enter.
funny.
And there you go. And then go back to, change it back to median point, and it'll be scaling around the median point. So now do SX again, and you're scaling around the like center points, so you can kind of move them apart easily. Yeah, there's actually, so there is, you can mirror stuff in Blender. There's a modifier that lets you mirror, and that's like pretty, if you ever are making like a proper 3D model that's symmetrical, you're gonna do mirroring, so you won't even have to worry about that. But that's a quick workaround there with doing the scaling. I would, at this point, I would urge everyone to take a second and try to make a 3D model, kind of like the little jet engine thing I made, or do whatever you want, but just try to do it and talk to me about what problems you run into so that we can, get things covered and you can get a little bit of that hands-on experience because, I can teach you the physics of riding a bicycle, but you have to practice riding a bicycle to effectively ride a bicycle. Like it's just, it's not a super simple, it's simple, like the keybinds are simple, but you got to do it. You got to like practice with the keybinds a little bit of E, a little bit of S, a little bit of G and X, a little bit of R.
Like,
yeah.
How do I delete the monkey? Is it?
Yeah. So, when you're, that's a question with a slightly more complex answer. If you're in edit mode and you delete everything, you press A, you select everything, then you press X and you delete everything. You have deleted the geometry, but you haven't deleted the object. You're still inside of that object in edit mode. So you can add like fresh geometry and that'll work just fine. Alternatively, you leave edit mode and you press X and it deletes the entire object. And then you add a new object. So there's like two ways to go about doing that. But generally, just select everything and press X. And then that ought to do it. And
okay.
To elaborate on what I mean, like, say you're like, you're right here with the monkey. I'm in object mode right now. So if I press X and I delete it, it deleted the object. You know that there's an object there by this little orange dot. There's a little orange dot. That's the origin of the object. When you move the mesh, it doesn't move the origin of the object. So when I go back into object mode and I try to rotate this, it's actually rotating around its origin. That's a bit of a little thing to kind of know there. Those little orange dots represent the centers of different distinct objects, and you can see them when they're selected. So you can see that they have their little. Here, if you can't see what I'm talking about that little orange dot at the center of each monkey. So yeah, when you delete things in object mode, it deletes the object. As you can see, it disappeared from the collection. However, if I was in edit mode and I just deleted all of the geometry, notice the delete menu is much more complex in edit mode. You can delete faces, edges, vertices. That becomes significant because if I select this face and I press X and I do faces, I've deleted exclusively the face, but I have preserved the 4 points that were defining its corners. I just deleted the connection between those points. However, if I had deleted vertices, it deletes the 4 corners and any connections that those were connected to. So, if I delete edges, it deletes those edges, but it preserves the points. So there's still like definition for those other faces. You see how that kind of works? You'll get an intuitive feel for it, but for the most part, you probably want to press X and delete faces whenever you're deleting stuff and it's geometry. It's very rare that you'll be like, oh, let me get rid of this single vertex, and then you do so, and it does that. A little bit of brain surgery here.
When you press Shift and right click, it moves like the reticle here. How do I move that back to the origin
Shift
of the center of the object?
Oh, yeah. Shift.
Mess that up immediately.
You're good. Shift C actually does that. So I actually didn't know that was the keybind. That was very informative. I've missed that keybind for a very long time, and I always thought I had to click over here to move it around. That's great. Shift right click. This is the 3D cursor, and the 3D cursor has very rare use cases. But the 3D cursor is where new geometry will be generated. So if I put it over there and I go to object mode and I add another monkey, it spawns it at the 3D cursor. So if I, Shift C centers it. Shift C centers it and your perspective. It centers the cursor and your perspective. You can also Shift S for whatever reason gives you this radial menu and you can move the cursor to whatever you've selected. There's a lot of times where that comes in handy. Cursor to active, or yeah, selection to cursor moves anything you have selected to the 3D cursor. 3D cursor is not super common. Okay, let's see. Hash slinger. If you were making something like a simple mug, so it had the cup parts and handle, should I create a cup and then create a new object for the handle, or should I add geometry to the cup to create a handle? Does that matter? That's a great question. Let's look at, let me make a little mug thing. So, here's a mug. There. Don't worry about what I just did to make this look mug-like. There, whatever, mug. And then you want to add like the handle. Handles are weird to do. Generally, I'll put it this way. When you're exporting to Unreal Engine, you're going to export the entire model. A single object. So when I export to Unreal Engine, I want everything to be in a single object. But for Blender purposes, you can keep things separate. If I want to, I can just I would do this with a curve, honestly. I can add a Bezier curve, move this over here, rotate it 90 degrees on the y-axis, rotate this handle of the curve. You can kind of see what we're about to do here. Grab this on the z-axis and this on that axis. Go to the curve information. Give it some. Maybe not quite that. Give it some. Oh boy. Bevel, right? Give it some of that, and then put it in there and go object, convert to mesh. And there we go. So whatever. I've got a separate mesh here now, right? So is this model a good model? I cannot export it like this, Noah. So say you've got like this mesh and you got this mesh. Like, I can't export it like this. You have to make them a single object. And the way you do that is by selecting one, selecting the other, joining them. And bada beam, bada boom, they're a single mesh now. But here's the thing. There's some bad practices here. No, Exonite, even in Unity, it'll import it as a prefab, but the prefab will have like multiple sub-objects. Generally, I think you want to export it as a single object from Blender. What did I do to join them? I pressed Control-J. So I selected one and then the other, and I hit Control-J, and it turned everything I selected into a part of the last thing that I selected. So if I have like 10 objects here, let me explain what I kind of mean here. J for join, I should have seen that coming. If it's one object in Blender, it's going to be one object in Unity with two submeshes. No. If it's two objects in Blender, it's going to be one object in Unity with two submeshes, I believe. I'm quite confident about that. Two objects with one mesh each. Oh, yeah. If you export this to Unity, it'll export these as like one object with two submeshes. That's weird. Generally, guys, like one mesh. Even if it's like disconnected like this, that's fine. It's one object, right? In terms of how Blender processes the data, just export like one object. That it'll save you some headaches. Can you assist me? I cannot get the programmer to show up on my PC, the DLL file. And the bin 60. Oh, someone needs help with their digital logic lab, bruh. No, I'm good. Thanks, bro. I'm not the TA. I helped Julian, but that'll be all. So, okay. Thanks for the explanation. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I hope so. Sorry, it's not super clear. I will say though, regarding intersecting meshes, this is okay. This is acceptable. What is not acceptable? You should make every effort to limit the amount of mesh that is never going to be visible to the player. So there should not, like that surface area there should be limited if you can. The surface area that is hidden from the player. That might be true for Unity, William, but generally it's best practices to export everything as a single object. Like, I get it, Unity might handle that, but even in, like, Unreal Engine, you really don't want to work with submeshes. Unreal Engine will process them as a single mesh, and best practices are the kinds of practices that work between all engines. And so if you want something that works with all engines, just join everything into one object. Yeah, yeah, exactly what Julian's saying. It's just export stuff as one object. You are right, William, but one object. See, that's the thing. Single object or mesh. Now we're getting confused with the vocabulary, but you know, when I say single mesh, in a way this is like two separate chunks of mesh that are not, you know, joined together, but it is a single object. However, in Unity, this would be described as a single object with two submeshes because of the way that Blender exports and how Unity calls things. I don't like that at all. Unreal Engine, if I exported these two together, Unreal Engine would have treated them as a single mesh. They would have, like this, they would treat them as if they were like that. Like they're, you know, just one, like, mesh that's like that. Single object with two sub. I don't quite follow, William. This will be single object with two submeshes in Unity. No, that's one object. You got a cylinder there. This is definitely going to be one object right now. One object. It's going to be one object with two submeshes. Now it's going to be one object. Again, I don't like how Unity does these things, and I also advocate for best practices. So let's not confuse ourselves. Just export stuff as a single object. You can see up here, single object. It's a single entity over here in Blender. That would definitely, yeah, we're not talking about the same thing, William. You're using Unity vocabulary, which is like confusing and also doesn't really obey best practices. Just one object. See, and what Julian is saying, separate is not a very clear terminology, right? Like not in terms of like whether they're connected physically or not, but in terms of how the data is handled. And just one object, guys, one object. Export things as a single object. I don't care if it's a bunch of disconnected meshes, as long as in Blender it's one, you know, entity, one object, that's good. If it's two objects like that, that's not good. You don't want to export something that's intended to be a single thing like this. That's generally ill-advised. Especially for Unreal Engine, Unity will allow it, but it's not good practice. I hope some of you have been able to tinker around with 3D modeling throughout that period. Let's talk about loop cuts for a second. Here's a little spaceship that I made. I press Control R, it inserts loop cuts. I press left click, and it's done. Let's see that over here in Blender. I'm gonna look at this cube. I'm gonna press Control R and mouse over the edge across which I want to insert cuts, and I can scroll up to add a lot of them. I can type in the number of cuts that I want, like 1,212 cuts, and then I can left click, and I've inserted 1,212 cuts along an entire loop. Why is that convenient? It lets you do some pretty cool effects. You guys that came in for the last session probably saw me generate that cool ring looking thing, right? Maybe? I made that ring for the spaceship. I generated that really quickly, and I did so by using loop cuts. Ring for the spaceship. The ring for the jet that we had like a reward system when you walked through it, when you flew through it. I did this, and then oh, I suppose I didn't do loop cuts. I definitely did not do loop cuts. Never mind, guys. Never mind. I didn't do loop cuts. But loop cuts are relevant here because they let you do like, let's see, select similar length. Yeah, okay. Loop cuts would kind of let you achieve like that effect that we were playing with last night. Yeah, sorry, that's actually not relevant. Let's just do, cool, whatever. I'm just messing around, sorry. Loop cuts are convenient for that little spaceship that I had modeled in the GIF on the PowerPoint though. I'm gonna try to quickly remake it and make it look kind of cool. Let me go a little bit of a cockpit here. Yeah. Just like that. And then it had like these big wings. Scale that on the y-axis. Scale it on the x-axis and on the z-axis. And then what I did was I was like, okay, let's give it some cool segments. So I did Control R. I do that. And then you can actually select some of these faces. You can be like, bang, you know, and it looks a little more spaceshipy, I guess, right? Kind of cool, kind of cool. You can actually select the entire loop by holding Alt and clicking on an edge, and then I can do that, and I can move it like backwards, and then I've got this cool effect, like. Yeah, just some things. You're probably going like, oh, how did you select the loop? Yeah, I didn't explain that very thoroughly. I haven't really explained loops very thoroughly. They're a bit of a complex subject, but holding Alt and clicking on an edge lets you select an entire loop. This is me doing exactly that in a GIF here. So I'm holding Alt and Shift, clicking on those edges, selecting the loops, and then I do Alt-E, extrude faces along normals, and I just give it that little bump, and now it's, you know, spaceship looking, I guess. I don't know. Cool. Another broken slide. Typical. Some more models that I made exclusively with extrusions and loop cuts and all that. Deletion is a bit of a complex topic. Undoing, yeah, Control Z. Control Shift Z is redo, so that's kind of important. You know, if you wanna look really cool, like you're modeling at the speed of light, you can start by making the model, and then you can Control Z a lot, and then you can Control Shift Z and be like, look how fast I can model this. Yeah, so that's definitely not what I've been doing. 100% not what I've been doing. But yeah, just lets you undo things and redo things. Pretty key knowledge there. Control Shift Z for redoing stuff. Yeah. Spaceship. I don't know. What else we got here? Subdivision. Yeah, that's kind of a big one, I guess. So subdivision is really an operation that you want to avoid, but sometimes, very rare occasions. For example, let's look at let me make a little house model. Let me just here, bang, SY, E, SY. There you go. Basically a house. Amazing, incredible, literally just beautiful. The happy little house. Let me turn on shading because it's a little bit difficult for me to see the edge there. Okay. Say I want to add a window to this house. I'm going to extrude this. Scale it down. Do that. And then I'm like, oh no, I want this window to have like, I want it to be like a cross pattern in it. I can right click and do subdivide. And that introduces the cross pattern, but it also introduces the bane of 3D modeling. And that is n-gons. Create n-gons. What is an n-gon? An n-gon is a polygon with more than 4 sides. Why is it an issue? Let's take a look at why it's an issue. This is a polygon with more than 4 sides. Notice it is a like trapezoid, but it's also got this division here. Now you're thinking, wow, that's wholly insignificant to the definition of the trapezoid. It's got the same surface area, you know. This is literally completely flat, so it's a non-issue. And you're right. When I export this and import it into Unreal Engine is going to automatically triangulate every surface on our mesh. I just did that by doing Control T. Control T is the triangulate keybind. But why is it an issue? Because sometimes Unreal Engine will triangulate things differently than what you intended. So you might be 3D modeling in Blender over here. You're going like la 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 3D modeling, and you grab this point and you pull it out. Now Blender's going, oh god, what the fuck? How do I render this trapezoid? Because this trapezoid, it doesn't know where to cut it up. So Blender is guessing, and it's doing this. It's inserting a line right there. It's inserting an edge right there. and that's how it's choosing to render it. So from this angle, you know, it looks weird. From like this angle, it looks weird. It doesn't know how to shade it. Blender is just doing that. It's like implicitly introducing an edge there. However, maybe for whatever reason, we, the 3D modeler, did not intend for the edge to be there. We intended it for it to be here. It's possible that when I export this to Unreal Engine, it'll triangulate it differently than Blender is, and it'll triangulate it over there. So that's an issue. In general, this is an issue with even like quadrilateral surfaces. Like if I move these two vertices out like that, right now Blender is inserting an edge over here. That's effectively what it's doing. You know, you can see that from the side perspective. However, what if we wanted it to insert an edge there? That's different. That is literally different. So it is very important that one, quadrilateral surfaces remain flat. They better stay flat. Like when you export things to Unreal Engine, it better stay flat. Two, you should not have n-gons. Never let n-gons happen. Why are n-gons bad? Let's take a look at another example. Say I want to subdivide this face now. Actually, no, say I want to subdivide this guy. Yeah, look at that. I am gonna try to subdivide this guy. Nothing's happening. I just ran the subdivide operation 3 times. Nothing's happening, right? If I go into point mode, a lot happened. It introduced points along the edge here, but it doesn't know how to subdivide the n-gon. It doesn't know where to draw the triangles and start making cuts in them. So instead, you have this like ridiculous n-gon. And now this is a crazy n-gon. Like subdivision introduces n-gons. So now that's an n-gon. This guy was always an n-gon. This was an n-gon. So now we've got this like really stupid geometry. Like this is bad. This is really, really bad. Like this is bad modeling. This is not acceptable. So now we have to go up here and we have to merge all of those together and then merge all of these together with that edge and try to undo the damage we've done. Yada yada. I'm pressing M to merge. That's the keybind for merging. Not N. M. M as in Michael. Just gonna circle select these guys, merge with the last one, and then circle select all these guys, and merge with the last one. So, yeah, n-gons. Correct. The way Antolini just spelled it is excellent. N-gons, more like n-gons. Like, get them out of there. Fuck off, n-gons. That's perfect. Thank you, Antolini. That is serendipitous spelling. Yeah, n-gons are bad. However, when you subdivide, there's a checkbox. It's a little checkbox that says create n-gons. You turn that shit off, and it automatically triangulates anything that the subdivision touched so that you don't introduce n-gons. Another reason n-gons are bad is they break up a loop flow, like a quad flow, which is like a kind of a property of a mesh. A clean mesh has nice edge flow. Let's look at an example of edge flow. This is a mesh with really good edge flow. There's loops everywhere. There's like a loop going. This is like an obvious loop, and there's like loops intersecting it going around the nose like that. Like everything's kind of smooth, and everything is quadrilateral surfaces. That's an example of good edge flow. These are examples of bad edge flow and correcting them. Like this is 5 edges going to 3 edges and then smoothing it out. 3 edges going to 1 edge and smoothing it out. These are like really formal 3D modeling techniques that they would teach you in college. But you don't need to go to college for this stuff. That honestly. Anyways, I hope it doesn't bother anyone. I know a lot of us are in the DAS program, but I'm not in the DAS program, and you can find this stuff online. It's pretty helpful. Right. Yeah, so that's, here's, right here, edge loops. Right, n-gons break up clean edge loops. These are like nice examples of edge flow. And you can select edge loops by holding Alt and right-clicking. So for example, let's go to the Suzanne. Let's go to the monkey. I want to select the loop that goes around this guy's eyes. I just hold down Alt, and it selected that entire loop. It just follows this like algorithm of going to the next edge until it hits a wall. If I want to select this loop, it selected that entire loop there, as you can see. This loop, or this loop, or the loop inside of the ear. Oh, look at that. So that's, yeah, the algorithm went really weird there. It was like, oh, okay, there's a triangle, so I'm going to stop. And it went all the way around the back, and it followed that, and it went all the way that way, and followed that until it came out over here and looped around there. Like, this is not really a proper loop. This is an example of like weird edge flow creating, not really good loops that kind of go weirdly into the ear. But yeah, that's and for example, if I do Control R here, you can see that's how loop cuts work. They insert cuts along a loop. So yeah, if I wanted to add like cuts here, I could, and then we could give him like a Bane mask by holding down Alt and Shift and clicking on these edges. I can select those loops, and now it's Cyber Monkey. Yeah, bet you didn't see that one coming. Cyberpunk Monkey. Yeah. Cool. Okay, so yeah, Alt Cyberpunky Monkey. Yes. Cyberpunky Monkey. It's 5:45, and this is, I think, a good point to just kind of stop and be like, ask you guys to model something, or maybe you ask me to model something, and I run through it step by step, and we all follow along, or I don't know. I definitely need to go at 6, though. I'm honestly, tonight's a tight schedule for me.
How did you select the ring of polygons at
Yes,
the end?
that was that's selecting edge loops. So what you do is you hold down Alt and you click not in the middle of a face. That won't do anything. I mean, it will, but it'll kind of arbitrarily select an edge loop. You click on the edge along which you want the loop to propagate. So if I click on this edge, it selects that loop. I click on this edge, it selects that loop. I click on this edge, it's that loop. This one, that loop. You see how this kind of works? You get an intuitive feeling for it. I click on this, it follows that loop. If I hold down Shift while holding down Alt and clicking, it selects multiple, does exactly what you would expect it to do, I think. Yeah. Any thoughts, questions, concerns, comments? Going on an hour 23 minutes now. So what else? What can I do for you people? What's the anyone have any curiosities? Anything you want me to try to speed model? Try to make a
Quick question.
building. Yeah.
How do you make multiple cuts?
Oh.
Cuts, no, loops. In quickly. So, because right now I just have one loop at a time. How do you
right.
expand?
So scroll up. When you're doing Control R, right? Sorry, Control R inserts edge loops. So you wanna insert a lot of them. You scroll up, and it inserts a lot within the same loop. As you can see what I'm doing on my screen right now. That's me scrolling. Or you can type in a number.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Absolutely. I'm gonna make this into a little high-rise building. We can do some windows. Actually, I'm gonna select these entire loops. Do Alt-E. Individual faces, and then I'm going to go up here, individual origins, scale them down, extrude them inwards, add a loop cut here, give these guys some awnings, maybe an awning over here as well, a little doorway, a little bit of extrusion there, move it a little closer to the ground, give it a loop cut, but that loop cut introduces a lot of geometry, whatever, no big deal. Individual faces, scale them down a little bit, grab y-axis, there you go, got a cool little high-rise apartment building, give it a rooftop axis, like that, maybe a little air conditioning unit, that, maybe a little bit of that, and a little bit of E, R X E R X E E okay, let's just undo that. R X E R X X, a little bit of air conditioning, and then a little bit of a rooftop axis kind of looking thing. And I'm gonna bevel this. We haven't talked about beveling yet, but that's Control B. Profile like that, and then a little bit of E there, SC, SX. Yeah, little city building. Speed model a Starbucks cup. Bro, I literally have an instructional video just for speed modeling a Starbucks cup that I made for my students. I'm not even joking. Oh my god. Spot on, Thad. Spot on. Right here. Hold on. Wait. Modeling, was it modeling challenges? Oh god, I swear to god, I literally have a video just for that. Yeah, here's a Starbucks cup. Let's do
Yeah.
cylinder. What was that? Who said something? Did someone say something? Okay. I right clicked and I did shade smooth. Something that you can do. This is pretty insightful here. Notice this entire cup is smoothly shaded, including this edge over here. This edge over here is completely lost when you turn on smooth shading, because what it's doing is it's putting a normal here, it's putting a normal here, and it's going, let me just curve that over to transition to it smoothly. And we completely lose that edge in how the surface is shaded. So to do that, to fix that, automatically, Blender will handle it for us. You go over to this green triangle when you have like a object selected that's a mesh, and you click on normals and you click auto smooth. And now what it's going to do is it's going to say any angle over 30 degrees gets a sharp edge, and then everything else gets a smooth edge. And just like that, we're modeling, comfortably. So let's do a little bit of this, and maybe a little bit of that, and some of that, and how does the Starbucks cup even look? Who knows?
It's got the sippy cups now though, because of the it's got little thing coming out.
I think. I'm not sure what you're talking about, to be honest, but.
I think, didn't they replace it with you don't do the straws anymore because of environmental reasons, and then they had the paper straws, and now they transitioned into having a little thing you sip out of.
Interesting.
So no straw.
I'm not really aware of that, but that sounds nice. Good for them. I haven't been to.
It's like
a toddler's drinking cup. It's very nice.
I haven't been to Starbucks in a fat second.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. Let's rotate around. Active element, R, Y. I know that they have this kind of effect in their cups, or they used to at least. And then they had this there's a little hole to drink out of right here, and that looked kind of median point. It looked like that, and then it went down, but then it was also rounded, so I'm gonna select those 4 edges there, still holding down shift, and then I'm gonna do Control B and give it that bevel, that tic-tac shape. And we have the workings of a coffee cup. A little bit of beveling here for that smoothness. Probably a bevel here. Bevel. Oh, select the whole loop. A little bevel there. I heard Cafe Cubano. So that looks weird. Why does that look weird? Something's weird about the shading there. It's not transitioning smoothly. I don't know, this looks weird. Is there any way to move the camera while extruding? What do you mean? I'm gonna extrude and then... Oh, no, there isn't. Yeah, I suppose there isn't. No. Yeah, while you're in the middle of an extrusion, you kind of have to, like, pick your camera position first. That's a good question, Andy. Yeah, just something you kind of learn to live with, I guess. It's never really been an issue for me, but I suppose it would be convenient to have some freedom of moving the camera while you're extruding. If you want to move something really far, like if you're asking that because you've extruded something and it's like way out there and you don't know how far it is, just like zoom out more or something. Like, I can't imagine a situation where you're extruding well beyond the limits of your camera and doing so precisely. If you're doing so precisely, you can type in the units by which you're extruding something. So I can be like E, X, and then I can move it 200 meters along the X-axis, and it just did that. That was 200 meters away. I don't know if that answers your question, but I hope that helps a little. It's 5:55. I'm gonna bounce like exactly at 6. Is there a way to separate two parts of an object, like take the lid off the Starbucks cup? Yes, that's a great question. Let's select the lid. This is a nice little technique. A technique that only works if you have a number pad or if you're willing to press the F3 key a lot. I use it a lot. It is called expand selection. When I select this face and I hit Control and plus on my number pad, it selects the adjacent faces. It's like a spreading infection. When it selects the adjacent, I keep pressing Control plus, and eventually we've encapsulated the entire cup, and just due to the nature of that algorithm, we capture exactly the, the cup. Now what I can do is I can press Y, I believe, and Y tears it away from the rest of the mesh. So it inserts a tear between what you selected and what you haven't selected. It does not insert a tear between those faces. So now it's a separate part of the mesh. If you want to make it a separate object, you press P and you do separate by selection. And now it has created a separate object in Blender. Why would that ever be useful? For animation purposes, for cutting up your model and like making it into multiple models, I guess. Yeah, P is a weird keybind. But remember, there's always F3. So you asked me, is there a way to separate two parts of an object? Think about that, right? What's the keyword there? The keyword is separate. I'm just gonna be in edit mode. I'm gonna select what it is that I want to separate. I'm gonna look up F3, separate. And there it goes, mesh, separate by selection. Yes, and just like that, we've separated that chunk of the mesh. So use F3 when you are A, too lazy to Google, and B, know the keyword. But optimally you learn the actual keybinds. That's best. That's pretty cool. I'm glad. Yeah, literally like all 3D modeling, at least hard surface modeling, right? Like let's look at my Rocky guy from our game jam. This guy was not made in the conventional way. This guy used some different techniques. This guy used some sculpting, and in addition to sculpting, some displacement mapping, yeah, this guy was like very carefully sculpted and is not at all, he's very different. he is literally built different. It's a different style of modeling, different techniques. There is a sculpting mode in Blender. It is incredibly powerful. You can, sculpt stuff. Give this guy some bulging muscles. Yeah. Rocky looking like he's got a pump. Some biceps. Yeah, and then just go back to this running animation with this new massive bicep that doesn't obey the animation properly because it hasn't been skinned correctly. But that's okay. Yeah, yeah. Bada beam, bada boom. Rocky. Yeah, there's sculpting, there's displacement mapping, so there's different modifiers. The modifiers tab, oh god, it is 5:59. I gotta bounce in a second, but this blue wrench here is the modifiers panel, and this is all sorts of crazy stuff that you can do to a 3D model. You can you can do a ton to a 3D model. With geometry nodes, you have as much control as some third-party program called Houdini that normally would cost you $20 a month and is this like literally god-tier program for massive scale, hyper detailed 3D models that are being generated with like code, node-based programming. Blender is starting to support that, and it's heavenly. It's like insane. But yeah, modifiers let you do like really cool 3D modeling stuff. You can make your 3D model behave like a fluid. You can make it behave like clothing and have a physics simulation. You can mirror it. This one's really useful. Mirror mode, right? And I can just do that. And I've got a 3D model where I can only work on one side, and it'll automatically mirror everything to the other side. And you can make it so that they like intersect and don't, just like that. And yeah, there's a lot of useful stuff in that blue wrench section. So I encourage everyone to explore it at some point. This was definitely a bit of a rushed presentation. It is 6 o'clock. I gotta go. I hope that, threw a lot at the wall here. I hope some of it stuck. But making 3D models is a really useful and transferable skill. It's involved in literally all game development. Even 2D game development has some 3D models in it, usually. And it's just so great to know. You can use these 3D models to 3D print. You can use these 3D models and put them in a CAD program and run structural simulations on them. You can do so much with the skills that come with 3D modeling. Like it is probably some of the most transferable skills that you can learn at this club, and I think they're very important. They were what I started with as far as game dev goes, and 3D modeling I think is a really valuable skill set. So yeah, I hope this was insightful. Stay away from N-gons. N-gons are gone. Yeah. That's it from me, guys. I'm going to stop the recording. I'm going to start it uploading to YouTube and probably get a link out in the chat by the time I get back.